These two optic setups are arguably opposites. The dot magnifier combo is meant for close, but it can flex far. The LPVO with the top dot is meant for mid-range, but it can certainly flex close. And then we throw the ACOG into the mix.
It started out with a kiss, how did it end up like this? It was only a kiss, it was only a kiss. Now I'm falling asleep, and she's calling a cab while he's having a smoke, and she's taking a drag. Now they're going to bed, and my stomach is sick, and it's all in my head. But she's touching his chest now. He takes off her dress now. Let me go. And I just can't look. It's killing me. And taking control. Jealousy turning snakes into the sea, swimming through sick lullabies, choking on your alibis. But it's just the price I pay. Destiny is calling me. Open up my eager eyes, 'cause I'm Mr. Brightside.
Guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching. We don't thank our audience enough. If you guys want to support us, the cheapest and fastest way is simply by hitting the subscribe button. It does make a difference. And a huge shout out to Patreon for funding all of the blood and effects that we need in order to kill Drew for fake in a bunch of our intros. That is not a small budget, so huge shout out to you. Thank you guys. Let's get back to the ACOG. So the ACOG is it's in its own category. It's somewhat of a predecessor to the LPVO family and also somewhat of an extension of a red dot magnifier combo. It is neither a precision optic nor is it a super close CQB optic. And it really rounds out the three categories of optics that a lot of people look at, especially for the civilian market and looking for something that supersedes what mil-spec could be. So my question for today is, what optic is the best for civilians? But I'm actually going to be testing and shooting these in a couple of different drills from 0 to 100 yards and then from 200 to 600 yards, really to find out what I shoot with the best, all on 14.5 rifles with the same gas settings, no extra lights, lasers, or accessories, just testing the optics. Now, after I run these drills, I'm going to be calculating my hit factor, my speed, and accuracy combination to really figure out what I shoot the best with. And you have to remember also that everyone is going to have somewhat of an optic bias. The tool that they have the most experience with, I assume, is going to be what you perform the best with. Now, there could be some nuance there. If you're shooting out at distance with an ACOG, that's very simple. It's probably going to be a lot easier than shooting something with a whole bunch of widgets and gadgets on it and you don't know how any of it works. Now, my goal with this is not to sell you on a specific optic. My goal is to really just test myself. I've been shooting LPVOs with top dots consistently for a number of years now, and I wonder if I'm not missing something with a red dot magnifier combo. I have almost no experience with an ACOG, so we'll really see how a first-time shooter with an ACOG, all things considered, actually performs out at distance. All that being said, guys, I'm itching to start shooting, so let's go hit the range and start shooting some drills from 0 to 100 yards. All right, I ran 3 drills all inside of 100 yards. One that forced me to move a fair amount, another one that forced some transitions, and then a third one all at 100 yards, but was causing me to change positions each time after every 5 rounds. Now, if you run a drill like this or a list of drills with maybe some friends' rifles, you'll notice that as you continue to shoot throughout the day, you're probably gonna get better as you go. You're gonna get more comfortable as you continue to shoot. Next, the weather in your environments is absolutely gonna have a say in how some of these optics shake out. So some of these, like the red dot magnifier and TACOM combo, have up to 5 lenses of glass on here, and if it's just pouring down rain, you may not shoot that drill as well as something like an ACOG when it is raining. So at the end of the day, it's probably going to take thousands of rounds and years of reps before you actually are able to hammer down on what optic performs the best, just even still from 0 to 100 yards. And it's probably going to be a percentage, not by this massive volume. So I just picked a few drills that I could run on one day as a set standard, really to see where I shot the best and what I liked the most. And when I broke all of my scores down, the setup that I actually shot the best was a 2 to 10 with a top dot. And nearly all of that, except for at 100 yards, I was shooting with the top dot. This is based off of my hit factor. What is hit factor? Hit factor is just a way of scoring how many points you are accruing per time taken. So it's a mathematical equation in order to break down how fast did you shoot it and how many points did you accrue on your target, and then it gives you a percentage or a hit factor. And this gave me the best hit factor. Now I shot the red dot and then this one and then the ACOG in that order. And you would assume, probably just like I do, that that red dot combo with a magnifier, it was going to perform the best, especially inside of 100 yards. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because I, a human being, not a machine, have a preference based on what I have been getting the most reps with. And as I mentioned before, a combination like this, whether it's a SIG 1 to 6 or a Leupold 2 to 10 with a top dot, is what I have the most dry fire and live fire reps with in the past 2 to 3 years. It's not that a dot and magnifier combo is slower or worse. In fact, I'd probably advocate that it's better. It weighs a little bit less. You get a bigger field of view with that bigger piece of glass, but I shot this better because I simply have more practice with it. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to put something like this on my home defense rifle. This is just what I'm grabbing when a pistol is not enough. So before I go start shooting my theory out to 600 yards with all of these different guns, let me give a little bit of context around what it is that I'm specifically looking for in a rifle optic combination like this. Guys, before we carry on, we have to take a moment and thank some of the sponsors that make content like this possible for you for free every single week. So first and foremost, Avon Protection. Now, I know we're talking about optics, but being that force reset triggers are now totally legal, make sure if you're shooting suppressed with a force reset trigger or even a third pin, you should be wearing some protection. Lead levels going up in your body because of all that suppressor exhaust and everything else can lead to some serious problems down the road. Now, if you're setting up an optic, I do prefer having a top dot, whether it's on top of an ACOG or on top of an LPVO, in order to work with a gas mask. But hey, you can totally make it work even with a co-witness or lower 1/3. So if you own a gas mask or you're considering buying one, which you should, make sure you're looking at how your optic is set up and getting some reps with that the full system all together. Next, guys, we have Wetworks. So a day like today is perfect for the Wetworks Summer Combat Hoodie. It is 100% mesh, while still being NIR repellent, let's just say. It does a really good job of blending you in under nods. And being that it is multicam, or if you go buy a standard one and you spray paint it like Drew did, you can totally blend into the foliage around you. So if it is way too hot, like today, to be outside shooting guns or LARPing around with your buddies and you still want to have some multicam capabilities, bro, take your shirt off and throw this on. He should make these in pants so you don't have to wear pants either. In any case, Wetworks Summer Combat Hoodie. I really appreciate this thing, again, especially in the summer. Finally, guys, we have Dye-Free Co. So I know we're talking about optics, but if you're going down the road at analyzing and testing what actually gives you the best performance on your carbine, you should seriously take a look at how you are holding your rifle. This is how you're manipulating your safety. This is what you're doing when you're actually pulling the trigger. If you're having to do reloads and you need to hold the gun up in front of you, different angles will absolutely give you different results. And I do really like, especially on heavy guns and long 18-inch guns, the Dye-Free Co. Kung Fu Grip. I get a better angle on pressing my trigger. It is easier to hold up when I am reloading because it's more of that vertical angle. So go check out Dye-Free Co. We have a link in the description, discount codes for all these brands. Check it out. With that, let's get back to the video. So a lot of people will say that civilians have no right even owning a scope or some form of magnification on their rifle, just because shooting past 25 yards at all is instant life in prison. Well, while that's not specifically true, there's also a lot missing there when they're talking about rifles in general. I don't own many rifles just because of self-defense. I own many rifles because there are times when pistols are simply not enough. So we have to really hammer down on what the purpose for your gun is. A lot of people will ask us, what's the best optic, or what optic should I buy for my 14.5 with this suppressor? And the question that needs to be answered is, what are you doing with the gun? So rifles like this are weapons of war. And actually, they need to have a fun switch. They need to have that third pin. FRTs is good, but we need to have that third pin in order for it to actually be constitutional. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. A gun like this is capable of shooting out to 500 yards, even 600 on a 14.5 is possible, but it's starting to stretch the ballistic limitations of that. I want to know what optic is going to give me the best performance, again, not just for home defense inside of 50 or 100 yards, but even out to some range. Now, you'll also notice that all these optics that I've selected and the way that they're set up are possible to run with flip to side thermals. They're able to function passively when I'm shooting with night vision, and they can even work with gas masks on if need be. So that was kind of some of the criteria that I set when looking at some of these optics. So let's say that you do have night vision on, you do have that gas mask. What is it that you see yourself doing with said rifle? To be honest with you, I'm not bugging out. I'm not running away from my house. I'm bunkering down with some friends and family very close by. And realistically, I'm probably standing around in the dark with a rifle on me or within arm's reach, and I'm observing. I'm observing things out to 100, 200, 300 yards. I do not want to prioritize CQB kind of work with a gun like this. I want to actually avoid anything inside of 200 yards, just because here in America, that's where most rifles are zeroed. 300, 400, 500 is where a lot of people start to struggle. And so that's why I want to have, again, that criteria set in here, because when I envision myself looking at what is the rifle for, okay, we got that down. What are you doing with the rifle? Unfortunately, probably a lot of standing around and observing out at range, out at distance. I still want to be capable inside of range. I don't want, you know, a 3 to 18 on an 18-inch rifle. No, I want to be flexible, but I'm also recognizing the fact that my goal is to keep things away. That's important criteria. Next, we have to ask, how precise do we actually need to be? And that means something a little bit different between a hunter and someone in the military. So for example, missing down range in a legit war zone is acceptable. You still need to be accountable for where your gun is pointed, where you're actually pulling the trigger, but precision and accuracy does start to get a little bit diluted depending on who it is that you're talking to. Even something so far as indirect fire is a tactic that is taught and practiced. Start shooting in the general direction. Shoot at the vehicle 300 yards away so that you and your team can maneuver around and flank. Now, even if we look at law enforcement, a tactic like that would be not taught, probably discouraged, but if the scenario did arise where that was needed, then it would be acceptable. Now, for someone like me, a civilian, a gun like this would not be coming out unless there was legit combat, an actual horrible scenario. I don't own this just for fun or just for plinking, although that is the case. I own it and train with it for the worst day, the worst outcome ever. So, to go back to the question, how precise do you need to be? Is minute of man with an optic like this acceptable? Is speed more of a priority and precision out at range is less of a problem? You're probably gonna have to answer that on your own. You're gonna have to look at your environments, where you live. Do you live in an urban area where zinging around may start to impact power outages, hitting a transformer, hitting, I don't know, water purification systems? Or are you out in a rural area where minute of man is a little bit more acceptable? Then inside of the confines of what's going on in your area if something bad does happen and you are pulling one of these out. Now, I have my answer to the question. I would like to be able to hit a target from 0 to 600 twice with 0 misses every single time. So that'd be 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, all the way out to 600 with 0 misses. I want my optic to be able to do that for me. We can't really tell exactly without shooting what of these optics is gonna give me that capability. So we may as well start shooting. Let's start shooting from 2 to 600 and see what we get. .38-46. 68.54. All right, I shot 2 different courses of fire with each of these guns. First course of fire was 2 rounds on each target at 200, 250, 3, 400, and 450. And then the second course of fire was 450, 480, 530, 570, and 630. So stretching some of those limits on capability at range, I had to move in between each target. Hit or miss, you gotta make all of your hits. Now, as far as the red dot and magnifier that I shot first, I felt like I was observing my targets fairly quickly, probably because I had that 3 times magnification, and it was easy to find those targets, but I was not able to see my misses. I was not able to make corrections. There was a little bit of wind doing funny things this morning between some of these different guns, and Drew was not calling anything other than impacts for me. So when I was zinging rounds, I could tell there's a little bit of left to right wind. I'm gonna hold left, but I didn't know by how much. When I was holding inside of my reticle, I knew I had to hold high, but I didn't know how high I needed to hold. But one thing that made it a little bit easier was this alphateric from Takom. So what the heck is this thing? It is a prism device that just flips over in front of my dot magnifier combination, and it simply adjusts the image of my target to an exact amount. So on this one, it adjusts it 9 MOA low, which causes me to bring my optic, my reticle up 9 MOA. So there's a breakdown on what you can actually find here, whether it's online and you're choosing which one to buy, or you forget and you need to actually figure it out. For this rifle with a 14.5 zeroed at 200 yards, I'm able to hold center at 200, head box at 300, then I put my alphateric over in front of my red dot, and then I can go back to holding center on my target at about 340, 400, hold head box at 500. So with this, it helps a little bit with how high do I need to hold with my red dot out at distance. You could also put this in front of an LPVO if you don't want to be dialing or holding. It helped some, but it still was not as much of a solution as something like having a reticle in my 2-10. So the 2-10 is great, but if you're not shooting a lot and learning your reticle system and making sure that you know where 1.1 is or 2.6 inside of your reticle, then all of your data and knowing your range, you're still back to just playing guesswork. So I will say that having a 1-6 or a 2-10 with a cool reticle in there is awesome, but it's on you to actually learn your system depending on the gun that you're shooting. And then really the sweet spot for the fact that I'm shooting a 14.5 with 77 grain was that an ACOG did line up darn near perfectly. Not perfectly, but close enough that shooting silhouette size targets, full man size targets, we were all able to make hits. Drew even made an impact out to 900 yards with this thing. There's not even a hold in here for 900. By simply picking it up, I shot this really well. So what did I actually shoot the best with? Honestly, back to the exact same story. The gun that I shot the best was a 2-10 with my dope. Now, being that there is a mil system in here, mil radian reticle, I did not dial, but I could have if I wanted to, and dope on my wrist meant that I was more confident in all of my shots. I shot faster by about 10 seconds than the ACOG, and I took less shots than any of the other optics. I took a lot of shots with my red dot, and that's simply because I didn't know where I was missing. So I was having to kind of shotgun pattern around my target until I found an impact and then send one more round at the exact same spot. My red dot total time was 1 minute and 54 seconds for both drills combined. The ACOG was 1 minute and 33 seconds for both drills combined, and then the Leupold was 1 minute and 20 seconds for both drills combined. And again, I burned a lot of ammo with that red dot. Is it possible to get hits out to 600 with a red dot? Heck yeah, absolutely. But you're not gonna get as many as consistent hits or nearly as fast follow-up shots just because you're not able to see the splash of where that little 5.56 round is going. The other thing that's really important to consider here is weight and cost. So let's dive into that too. All right, so if we're looking at the Leupold 2-10, specifically the Mark V with a top dot and the mount from Leupold, you're looking at about $3,500 if you are not shopping the sales. If you're just spending full MSRP price, that's kind of what you're looking at, 3,500 bucks, and it comes in right at 2 pounds. So it is, it's competitive on the weight, but all things considered, it's the heaviest one that we have out here. Then we get into the red dot magnifier Takom combo. This comes in at 1 pound, 10 ounces. And if you're just to stack everything together, again, full MSRP, you're looking at just under $1,600. If I were to throw a Unity riser behind this and under the magnifier, your price is gonna go up to a little over $1,600, so like $1,700-ish, and it's gonna increase your weight by about 3 ounces. So you start to get a little bit closer to the same weight as the 2 to 10 with a top dot. Then if we were to look at the ACOG, it is still just under a pound. And with the RMR included, it's about $1,700. Now, this is a phenomenal device, especially for the price. I would absolutely take this over a cheap 1-6 with a Chinesium red dot. I think it's got an amazing piece of history, and while I'm going to continue to sing its praises, I'm not in the same camp that's gonna say that this is still the best optic ever made and this is the only optic that everyone needs. I think it's an awesome optic to start with for people that are looking for mid to long range capabilities. But if you actually want the best and you're someone who's willing to get into the training, this is not going to have the same feature sets of parallax adjustments and everything else to be able to really stretch the legs of your 14.5 or your 308. Now granted, they do make other ACOGs for 308s, but even still, it's not going to have, once again, all of the same capability and versatility that something like a quality 2 to 10, 1 to 6, 1 to 10 variant might have. So guys, after shooting a bunch of drills up close, I kind of gave away the punchline. My take is this: when the world goes crazy and you actually pick up a rifle, God forbid that ever happens, the best optic for you is the one that you have the most experience with. We also need to be cautious about flip-flopping optics around. I know it's really easy to go grab that new shining thing, and it doesn't just stop at optics. This includes the pressure pad placement on your rifle, how your bipod is set up, how your sling is set up. Be very, very careful. Once you find a groove and a pattern, if you find a better way to run your gun, go ahead and do so. But just as an example, if I now go buy a new optic, I'm gonna have to mentally budget about 3,000 rounds of dedicated training, hours of looking over how the system works, researching battery life. Yes, we can look at it, on the website, but actually testing it in my biome with this temperatures, my batteries are doing this, shooting out at distance, these are the effects, and a lot of dry fire. I need to budget that money and that time to really know that optic setup in detail. And also, I know some of you guys may see me shooting a Leupold 2 to 10 with a Leupold Deltapoint and know that we do have a relationship with Leupold. Yes, they do sponsor us. We're very thankful for that. This honestly is just a placeholder for an optic that I know well and an optic that I actually like. If you go love a Night Force, or if you're awesome with your ACOG, man, good on ya. Just make sure that you're getting quality products and getting a lot of reps and training with them. Poring over your data book and knowing what your holds are, dry firing it, and a little bit of range time can make a huge difference regardless what optic you have. I've performed well with a SIG 1 to 6 for years. I had some things that I didn't love about that optic, and so I went back to an old school, discontinued Leupold Mk5 because I simply preferred it. So find what it is that you actually prefer and don't be too fast to just jump ship and go to something new that you have next to no or no experience with. All right guys, some data advice for you. So Nick actually had a really good one for us today, and this kind of hits home. I think it probably will for all of us. So just as an example, Drew had some rain coming in under his back door. No, actually he did. And he went to go solve the problem, and he wanted to remind all of you, no matter what it is, whether you're fixing a leaky back door or you're just going through life struggling, always do your best and caulk the rest.